Shalom Aleichem, my brothers and sisters. How are you? This is Brother Uriah Baraka coming at you one more time to expound on the word of what I think is a very important subject. On the last two parts of this series, Preparation to Exodus, we learned of the enslaved mentality, that was appropriated upon the children of Israel, brutally so. The killing of the first son, which represents the cognitives of truth that are suppressed unto a state of blindness that was produced from this repression. This is shown by the reaction of the Hebrews to Moses, who came and killed the Midianite, and when he came to counsel his brothers and to encourage his brothers, they turned on him. A man who tried to appropriate rescue upon them, they turned on him, and they went back and traitorously reported the matter to Pharaoh. They betrayed him. We know it was the Hebrews that betrayed him because no one else knew of the killing of this Midianite but the Hebrews. So Moses fled. And after Moses was negated, minimalized, and betrayed by his brethren, this manifestation of the enslaved mentality, which today we see now in many of our people who have been conditioned in supremacist culture. We see this every day. In many confrontations that we have, we see this habitual need to negate, minimize, and disempower one another, and then wonder why we're still enslaved. But Moses fled, realizing that while Beni Israel was in this condition of mental repression, from which is manifest an inferior perception by which they were blinded from the sight of seeing and understanding the true will and purpose of Yahweh. Moses, it said, fled. He fled from these traitors, these minimizers, from these negators. He fled to Midian, and Midian signifies and means contention, strife, a condition of struggle. A condition of struggle. He went into a place where there was a need for struggle. As soon as he got in Midian, there was an engagement. He got into a struggle with some false shepherds who was trying to subjugate the 7 daughters of Yithro. And Moses defeated them. He stood up for them, but this time he got a different reaction. He stood up for his Hebrew brothers and got a reaction of negation, minimalization, and betrayal. Well, this time he stood up for the 7 daughters of Yithro. But we see a different reaction opposed to when he defended the Hebrews, a reaction of reception and ultimately conjunction. The results of this reception and conjunction we see from the birth of the son that was born to his wife, from him. For his wife represents an affection of good, a good affection. And when good is conjoined to truth, that is love worked through faith, there is a birth. There is a new enlightenment. It's called a son. That male child that is born to those who are progressing in their spiritual growth and development. It is because reception and conjunction is a resultant effect of the appropriation of divine good by truth. And from all good appropriated by truth, there is a birth of truth. That is, there is a birth of a higher level of enlightenment by which Moshe, and any who does this, is granted clarity. Clarity to see and to understand things more purely, clearly. And he did. Because we see this former prince, this ruler, this man of great esteem, humbled himself through this enlightenment. He humbled himself to the priest Yithro. This humbleness is shown by the fact that Moses conjoined, married their eldest daughter, who represents an affection that derives from the priest. The priest meaning one who is in the wisdom of good, one who is able to instruct in divine good. The daughter represents a manifestation of the affection of that divine good that Moses conjoined to and birthed a son that is a higher enlightenment of the divine will. It is to be understood that in this new enlightenment, Moshe humbled himself to the instruction of the priest of Midian, Yithro. This is shown in Shemot 3:1, where it says, Umashe chaya rahi et sayon Yithro, chot nehul kohin Midian. And Moses, being a shepherd of the flock of Yithro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock, ha midbar, to the end of the wilderness. And at the end of the wilderness, it says he came to the mountain of the Elohim, Choreba or Koreb. We see here that Moses humbled himself, made himself compliant to Rohe, shepherd, lead the flock of Yithro. This is important to understand, that Moses did not shepherd what was his own, but gave himself over to the instruction of Yithro, someone who had a higher perception than himself, someone who had a clearer understanding of the will and purpose of Yahuwah. This shows the development of humbleness, anwa, that is, a behavior of self-denial. That's what humility is. It's not bowing your head to your oppressor and say, beat me. I'm going to turn the other cheek and you can hit that one too. This is foolishness. This is not what Yeshua taught, and this is not what the prophets taught. But a behavior of self-denial, and this must be clearly understood, that the life of humbleness or self-denial gives us reception of divine knowledge, wisdom, and understanding from the Elohim. You see, when you constrict your own selfish desires that causes you to oppose the standard of righteousness of Elohim, that constriction produces a door open for reception of the Ruach HaKadosh, who implants in us divine knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that, when appropriated, purifies the heart, the essential ontological vessel of man, for implantation of the power and the life of the divine nature. Let this be clearly understood. Without self-denial and a life of self-denial, one has no accessibility to the power and life of the kingdom. He can merely attain to an aesthetic religious form that denies its power or constricts the reception of divine power. Yithro was a Kohen, that is, he functioned in the wisdom of good, and therefore instructed Moshe in the principles of good, signified by a flock. And was to this instruction Moshe humbled himself and denied his own will and volition, denied his own selfish desires, denied his own narcissism, denied his own self-ambition, and he tended the flock of someone other than himself. He humbled himself to instruction. He humbled himself to correction. He humbled himself to guidance and became a shepherd of the flock of Yithro, and not of his own. And in this appropriation of humbleness of the divine good through the principles of truth came to the end, the Achar Hamidbar, the end of the wilderness, the Midbar, that is, the place or condition of temptation and affliction. Such a condition is called vastation. Let me say that again. Vastation, meaning affliction for the purpose of purification. That's what the word means. We must go through our midbar with the objective to be as Yeshua, obedient unto death. Yeshua learned obedience by the things that he suffered. That means his life was a life of affliction, a life of combat, a life of engaging those qualities within his flesh that could cause a nullification of the will and the purpose of Elohim that was within him. But he was obedient to the death. See, the obedient of the death of all afflictions, all sinful inclinations, and all lawless tendencies that is accustomed to the human flesh nature that we have been imprisoned into because of our disobedience. So he was obedient unto death, that is, the death of all evil thoughts of the heart, all intentions and inclinations of fornication and idolatry, all inclinations of theft and bearing of false witness, all inclinations of hateful thoughts and actions, and the Yitzhahara, the evil inclinations of covetousness, which is idolatry and greed. He was obedient until they were removed by the actions or the working of the Ruach HaKadosh. Until we accept that to be the man Israel, to be a Hebrew, that we must impose upon ourselves self-denial, as Yeshua HaMashiach teaches. Unless you deny yourself, you're not worthy to be called my Talmudim, my students, my disciples. This must be clearly understood. We must come to a clear consciousness of this and accept this and impose this upon ourselves, this standard of self-denial. Lo, tenag. Lo, not, negate, constrict, deny these tendencies and inclinations within us that oppose the righteous standard of Yahweh. This is how we gain strength and victory. This must be understood that to be in Mashiach, to be a part of the Messianic family, one must submit to a state of humility or self-denial to pass through the afflictions and in temptations of the midbar, of the wilderness, unto the purification of the heart. It is through this purification that we are able to see a pure vision of Elohim, as Joshua taught. Blessed are the pure at heart, for they shall see Elohim. Now this is Torah teaching, because when Moses came to the Achar Hamidbar, the end of the wilderness, the backside of the wilderness, the after experience of the wilderness, he looked up to the mountain. He came to the mountain of the Elohim, and he looked up and he saw fire, that divine light burning. See, it is at the end of your afflictions that you shall see him clearly. It is at the end of your passing through, taking instruction, humbling yourself to tend and care for something that is not of yourself. The things that Yithro gave to Moshe was things that Elohim gave to Yithro, and he passed it on to Moshe. Moshe was a good student, and he learned to shepherd, to appropriate the goods and truth properly so that he could gain victory over the afflictions and the temptations that exist in the midbar. Did not Yeshua do the same thing? Did he not was led by the Ruach HaKadosh into the Midbar, the wilderness, the desert, where he was tempted 40 days and 40 nights, and he became victorious because he stood upon the instruction of the word. It is written, you shall have no other Elohim but one. It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of Yahuwah. The word is truth, and it is life, and it is our power. And those who submit themselves not to Googling, but to the instruction of the word, those who become true students of this word to gain enlightenment through the life of self-denial, the constricting of what is your own, that you might see what is Yah's own, and he will give you responsibility over that to appropriate unto the purification of the heart. And at the end of that experience, at the end of your wilderness, you will look up and you will have a clear vision of the Elohim and of the will and purpose of Yahuwah. Well, that's enough for today. We're going to get back to you with part 4 of this study, and we hope it is being a blessing to you, but we're not seeking to aggrandize ourselves, but to empower the Hebrew community and the will and the purpose of Yahuwah. Brothers and sisters, Shalom Aleichem.